Some improvement programs fail because the solution was wrong. Most fail because the feedback arrived too late to do anything about it. The program board approved it in January. 4 phases, 18 months for the first. Feedback and review at the end of each phase. It looked thorough, it looked rigorous, and by the time the first phase completed, the problem it was solving had changed shape twice and the business had stopped waiting. The longer the delivery cycle, the more the world moves while the solution stays still. The team is solving last year's problem with this year's budget. And because the feedback only comes at the end, nobody finds out until the launch event. By then, the rework cost is enormous and the window for course correction has closed. 3 organisations, 3 different programs, the same structural problem. Long cycles, late feedback, expensive corrections. None of these outcomes were unforeseeable. They were all the predictable result of designing feedback out of the process. The real problem isn't ambition or poor planning. It's the assumption that thoroughness at the start substitutes for learning throughout. It doesn't. Every assumption that goes unchecked for a month becomes harder to change in month 2. By month 18, it's load-bearing. That's where ITIL's third guiding principle comes in. Progress iteratively with feedback is the third ITIL guiding principle. It's built on a simple idea that learning while you work is more valuable than planning before you start. Small steps, real feedback, honest adjustment. Done consistently, this is how good services get built and how bad ones get caught early. In practice, this principle changes how you structure work. Instead of asking, how do we deliver the complete solution, you ask, what is the smallest useful thing we can build and test right now? The answer to that question becomes your first iteration. What you learn from it becomes the brief for your second. This is the part most organisations miss. They adopt iterative delivery, but keep the feedback loop at the end. Or they run great feedback sessions, but operate in 6-month cycles, where the findings sit in a document until the next phase starts. The principle only works when the 2 halves run together, short cycles and continuous feedback, not one or the other. These 3 traps share a common thread. The form of iteration is present, but the substance is missing. The checkboxes are ticked, iterations, feedback sessions, review meetings, but none of it changes what happens next. The test of a feedback loop is simple. Did what you heard change what you did? Service Mimir had learned from the 18-month failure. The second attempt ran in 6-week cycles. At the end of each cycle, a 2-hour session with business owners. Not a presentation, a working review. What's right, what's wrong, what changes before the next cycle. By cycle 4, the design had shifted substantially. By cycle 6, it was live and it worked. 3 disciplines, small outputs, early checkpoints, honest decisions. None of these are complicated. All of them require the willingness to let what you learn change what you do. That willingness is rarer than it sounds, especially when a plan has already been approved and a timeline already communicated. The Orbis Health team had done everything right by their own process. Requirements gathered, design reviewed internally, sign-off obtained at each stage. But clinical staff hadn't been in the room since the requirements workshop 12 months earlier. When they saw the finished design, the gap was obvious to everyone in the room. It had been obvious for months to nobody involved in the build. The distinction between feedback as scoring and feedback as steering is fundamental to this principle. End-of-cycle feedback tells you where you went wrong after the fact. Mid-cycle feedback tells you where you're going before the damage compounds. The organisations that consistently deliver good services have built the second kind of feedback into the rhythm of their work. It's not an event, it's a habit. Ask these 3 questions at the end of every iteration. Right problem, current value, what we'd do differently. They take 20 minutes. They produce the 3 most important decisions you'll make before the next cycle starts. And they're the difference between a program that learns and one that just delivers. CalGrid's program had passed 3 governance reviews. Each phase had been signed off. The documentation was clean. Then the first round of structured user testing happened, something that had been scheduled for Phase 4, and within 2 hours it was clear the navigation architecture that underpinned everything was fundamentally misaligned with how citizens actually used the service. 3 phases of work, partially rebuilt. These 3 costs follow the same trajectory. The later the feedback, the higher the rework cost. The higher the rework cost, the lower the team's confidence. The lower the confidence, the harder it is to maintain stakeholder support for the next improvement initiative. Late feedback doesn't just damage the current program, it makes the next one harder to fund and harder to staff. The shift this principle requires isn't about doing less planning. It's about where in the process you expect to learn. Move the feedback loop from the end of the cycle to the middle of it, then to the beginning. Build the expectation into every piece of work that what you find out will change what you do next. That's not a methodology, it's a discipline. This is the rule. If your current improvement initiative can't be tested until it's finished, it's too big. If your feedback cycle runs longer than your iteration, your loop is broken. And if the findings from your last review haven't changed anything about how you're working, you're collecting feedback but not using it. Fix whichever of those 3 is true for you right now. 3 actions. Move the first feedback point earlier than it currently is. Split your next phase into 2 iterations with a real checkpoint between them. And agree before you start what a negative result means for the plan. Do all 3 and you'll have more useful information in the next 6 weeks than you currently expect to have in 6 months. This principle doesn't require a transformation. It requires one decision about the work you already have running. Find the improvement initiative closest to you right now. Add one feedback checkpoint that doesn't currently exist. Make it real. A named person, a specific question, a date. That's where this starts. 3 ways to go further. Share your longest feedback gap in the comments. It's a question worth sitting with. Check out the Mimir ITIL course for the full picture across all 7 principles. And this week, add one real feedback checkpoint to one real piece of work. A named person, a specific question, a date. That's the whole action. Share your experience.